as we launch into a review of quadratics for the final, I'm going to start by putting one on my paper, and I want you to do the same thing. This is a quadratic. We don't have to have every point of the quadratic figured out. I did go up and find this top one because it's got a name. Okay, thank you. I'm going to pause for a second. Okay, so copy this one down, and it is a quadratic, and there's quite a few terms you have to know. I believe if you kept track between now and the end of the hour, or the end of this lesson, I'm going to teach you at least 15 different things about quadratics. 15. You'll know some, but you'll have forgotten some. All right, so here's some that you might or might not have forgotten. What's that called? Good. What are the 4 names for those? Don't say them out loud. Write them down. There's 4 names for those red dots. I'm going to make them a brighter red here. There's 4 names for those. We could ask you to find the this, the that, the this, or the other thing. And there's another red dot up here that's got a name. Label all of those things. And one more thing. There's a dotted line that needs a label. There's a name for this dotted line that runs right down the middle. And what is that called? So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 terms that you have to know. We've just begun. I'm going to pause for just a second while you try to label those 7 different things. Okay, first we're going to do x-intercept and y-intercept. That's one of these 4 names, and there's a little saying that goes along with this that's really important. The x-intercept is where what? Y equals 0. That's especially important if you've got an equation like this, and they're asking you what the x-intercept is. You set y equal to 0, and then you realize, oh yeah, it's one of those kind where I can get the 2 answers by making this 0 and that 0. And then it also goes the other way around. If the y-intercept, or the x-intercept was where y is 0, what's the y-intercept? That's where x is 0. On this problem right here, would you please tell me what the y-intercept is? Don't say it. Figure it out. Bennett, can you repeat that sentence? The y-intercept is where what? X equals 0. So you just got to stick in a 0 here and a 0 here, and you realize that y must equal -3 times -2 would be 6. Raise your hand if you had 6. Nice. Okay, good. That's just a little reminder about x-intercepts and y-intercepts. They're a big deal. Then there was a couple other words like axis of symmetry. That's one of my kids called it the axis of symmetry, which I really liked because it reminds you it's x equals whatever. In this case, it's x equals 3. All right. And the vertex, probably the most important point on the whole parabola. A parabola has an infinite number of points. They go on forever as you head up or down if you have it flipped over one. But that's special, and it's got 2 names. It's either the blank or the blank. The vertex is either the blank or the blank. Talk to the kid next to you. What are those 2 things it could be? The vertex is the what or the what?
Oh, the maximum.
There it is, maximum or minimum. Okay, good. In this case, what is it? Is this one on the board, is it a minimum or maximum? That one's a minimum. All right, good. And can you tell by just looking at the equation without having to even graph it? Yes, you can. Do you remember how? Does this one have a min or a max? Min. If it had a max, there'd be a negative out front. So I said to call that guy Max. That little negative right there, his name is Max. So if I put a negative out there, then this thing will have a max. All right. Now, I'm on to this question. What is the max? If you know how to do this, it's super easy. What's the max? for this problem right here, what's the max? Hunter, what's the max? Nope. A max is a point. It's a vertex. So you got to have two numbers, something comma something. Mr. Breen, what do you say? 3 comma negative 8. That is the max because it's the vertex. And you can see the vertex because it's in vertex form. All right. Now back to this graph, which you probably still have. What's the equation for that graph? You could write it with the vertex or with the x-intercepts. Take a second, write the equation. I don't care. Write it one of the two ways, and then I'm going to have you write it the other way. Okay? So write it in vertex form. Y equals what? And then write it in factored form, because you'll use those two red dots. So there's 3 ways you can do an equation. One's called general form, one's called factored form, one's called vertex form. Right now, we did an example before we started the video about how to do vertex form. I'll remind you. X, and then it's going to be squared, and then I just have to know the vertex. In this case, our vertex is 3 comma negative 1, just because you can see it right there. Okay, so then it's x minus 3 minus 1. There's vertex form. Raise your hand if you had that one right. All right, good. Then the next one is the factored form. Well, it's got a 2 and a 4. So you go x minus 2 and x minus 4. As long as there's no stretch factor, it's that easy. If there was a stretch factor, you'd put it in front. If it was upside down, you'd put a negative in front. All right, last but not least, take that, which was the vertex form, and multiply it out, and you'll know the general form. Take a second, multiply that thing out. These are all questions that are likely to be on your final. Not wasting your time here. Find general form. All right, you should have known that this is x minus 3 times another x minus 3, and then you subtract 1. So that's going to be x squared minus 6x, and then there's a negative 3 times negative 3 makes positive 9, but you take away the 1, and that makes plus 8. And now without even looking, I could have got the factored form by just factoring this, see? I could have gone x and x, and since there's a minus in the problem, there's a minus. I look here, and there is not a negative at the end, so it's not plus and minus. That means it must be minus minus. And then a 4 and a 2, which is going to make 8, but also the inside and the outside make negative 6x. Cool. So there's a reminder of all 3 forms of the quadratics. Okay, what else do you have to know? So many things, unfortunately. I'm going to give you another one where I want you to figure out the equation for it. If this is a normal parabola that goes kind of like this, I'm being really loosey about it because I want to show you that it doesn't have a stretch and it also doesn't have, it's not upside down. It doesn't have a negative in front. Okay, so if it's like that, and you know it's not upside down, and you know there's no stretch, you should be able to tell me everything about it, including the equation for it. Why don't you start with that? What's the equation for it? This time I don't think you're going to use vertex form because I don't think you know the vertex. What's the equation for this thing if you don't know the vertex? Then I guess you gotta use factored form. I told you there's no stretch, and I told you that it's right side up. All right, talk to the kid next to you. What is that equation? So that was the equation that you'd start with. But if I then wanted to know what's the vertex, now the problem just got way harder because I didn't make it clear. You can't just trust that it's that. I was kind of just sketching it. So it got a lot harder right there, but that is typical R3 kind of question. You could do this. Figure out the vertex. And I know some of you have no clue. And I know some of you have an idea. I'd like you to discuss that idea, or maybe you need the idea, and how can you get the vertex? Not even what the answer is, just how could you do this? Please talk to the kid I've paired you with. I knew some of you'd get it. Axis of symmetry is the key. See, if you know that it has to run right down the middle, then you can go, if this was -2 and this was 4, then you can say that that's a total of 6, and so it must go over 3 and from each thing, and so this must be 1. Once you know it's at 1, the axis of symmetry is x equals 1. Now what do you do? Well, now you know this point, vertex, has got to be 1 comma something. See? And then the only thing left is to figure out what the something is. And so you can stick the 1 in the equation. See, look, it says y equals that. And if I know what to put in for x, I know what y equals. And it'll end up being 3 times -3, which would make -9. And I know I did not sketch this to scale properly, but it was down in the negatives, so that kind of makes sense to me. Raise your hand if you got that same thing and you understand this. All right, if you don't, you should come up and ask me about that, because that's a really critical. Can you figure out the vertex without being given the vertex? Okay, one more thing. If we multiplied this out, it would be x squared minus 2x minus 8. I know you know how to multiply these out. You could do that, right? What's sitting at the very end of it that's kind of important? Right here. What's that? That's the y-intercept. Because the y-intercept is where x is 0, and therefore that's 0 and that's 0, and then you'd have y equals -8. See? That's how you get the y-intercept. You set x equal to 0. All right. But there's a formula for the axis of symmetry that some of you are going to remember. X equals, don't say it, write it. You either know this little formula or you don't. This is not the quadratic formula. I would bet 30% of you have forgotten this formula. Do you get that makes it one of the most important things to write down? If you don't remember it, when I do tell you, you're not just going to instantly remember it for the rest of your life. A week from now is when you take your final. Actually, a little more than a week from now. So the point is, if you don't know it right this second, what makes you think you're going to just remember it after I say it? You're going to remember 10% of what I say today. So write it down. X equals -b over 2a is the axis of symmetry formula. So I'll show you how it would have worked here. -b would have been negative of -2, which makes 2, over 2 times a, and a is 1. So it's 2. Wait a minute, what did I do wrong? Something's wrong. -b 2 over what is 2? It should be 2. Oh, it's 2a. 2a, not just a. Thank you. 2 times 1 is 2. There we go. So it's 2 over 2. I knew I can't be right because I knew the answer was 1. There we go. Whew. Axis of symmetry. All right. Then what's that other formula that's got x, or that's got negative b and all over 2a in it? It's the quadratic formula. I want to remind you when you'd use that. Let's say that you got one and you're trying to solve it, and you try factoring it, and it doesn't factor, like that one. That doesn't factor. Then how do you solve it if it doesn't factor? The quadratic formula. Yes, that's on your test. Yes, you had those in past tests. Quadratic formula, it's for sure on the test. So please, memorize it. Write it down if you haven't already. I'll remind you in a second. You should give the kids 3 seconds to recall it. If they don't know it after 3 seconds, they didn't really know it. Negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Tomorrow, I'll remind you more. Actually, I think it's Friday. I'll remind you more about this, like what the discriminant is and all that stuff. But for right now, can you just stick the numbers into the quadratic formula and simplify it down? That's the last thing we got to do today, and then you get a whole bunch of work time to do the Schoology quiz. You should walk out of here today with no homework. It depends on how hard you work in work time, but from my experience, if you're going to make a mistake, it's going to be underneath the square root. So I'm going to take that carefully. 9 minus, and there's another minus, so it means 9 plus 28. 37. And that is your 2 x-intercepts. Who had 3 plus or minus root 37 all over 2? Okay, good. Then this brings up an important question. What if you could simplify it? This one you can't, but I'll give you one that you could. Literally 1/3 of last hour could not do this. Let's see if you can. 2 plus or minus the square root of 8 all over 12. Simplify that down. This, like I said before, it's the last concept. I just got to show you how to simplify them if you can simplify them. Now this next thing is saying a lot. I don't do these in my head anymore because when I do them in my head, I often will mess up one of the numbers and it'll feel totally right, but it'll be wrong. So I do these with 2 square roots. I go root 4 and root 2, and then that makes it easy for me to make sure I don't screw it up. I've seen so many kids mess those up too that I recommend the 2 root thing. So this is 2 plus and minus 2 root 2 all over 12. And now you'd need to simplify it by factoring the top, factoring the bottom, and then cancel what cancels. The 2 factors out of the top, the 2 factors out of the bottom, and I have 1. A lot of people forget the 1. If you try to just cancel and go cancel, 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 you'll probably forget the 1. All right? Can't cancel like that. You need to factor out the 2. And now these 2's cancel. 1 plus and minus root 2 all over 6. Okay, cool. You made it through another day of review for the final. Now there's a Schoology quiz. I'd like you to open that. I want to do the first problem with you. Because once you started, my dad always said you're halfway done. Carlos, the first problem is a graph. I can't ask you to describe the whole graph, but can you tell me what the vertex of that graph is? 3 comma 4 is the vertex. Good. So over 3 up 4. Why is that important? Because now you can write the equation for it. It is a multiple choice, but if you were going to write it, you'd say y equals parentheses x and then a squared, and then you'd use the 3 and the 4. Here's the most common wrong answer. X plus 3 squared minus 4. Pratt, what's wrong with my answer?
It's supposed to be -3, not.
That is correct. That should be a minus 3 in there. X minus 3 quantity squared minus 4.
Shouldn't it be plus?
What's wrong with that?
Shouldn't it be plus 4?
Very good. There's your final answer. Now, those were probably the distractor choices for the common mistake answers. All right, cool. I think from here, if you get stuck, you should ask the kid next to you, or you should walk up and get some help. But last hour, they seem to be in pretty good shape. So I think I'll let you just work from here. That's all I got for the video for today.